Okay, and as you see here, in the very beginning, oh yeah, baby. Okay, and in the preface of this, here book that's copyrighted in 1952, but it came from the revised from 1881 to 85. What I want you to pay particular attention to, if you will, is what's written right here. Hopefully you can see it. And it finishes up here at the top of this page. Let me read that to you. Well, greetings. I'm here again. I decided to come out. We've got some nice rain clouds coming in, thunderstorms it seems. And I wanted to make sure that I got this out that I had spoke of earlier. This is the Holy Bible. It's the Revised Standard Version. I used to have several King James versions, but this is a copyright in 1952. And here in the preface of these older ones, if you get them prior to, say, 1959, you have a great opportunity to find the preface in these. And this here will explain a little bit about the name, Yahweh. And I'll read this. This is a preface from page VI, or 6 there, I believe. And it says, a major departure from the practice of the American Standard Version is the rendering of the divine name. And there's nothing divine at all. You know, it has nothing to do with these wicked and evil spirits, you know, that people would divine and acquire divination from. But anyway, the way that it reads is a major departure from the practice of the American Standard Version is the rendering of the divine name, the Tetragrammaton. The American Standard Version used the term Jehovah. The King James Version had employed this in 4 places, but everywhere else, except in 3 cases where it was employed as part of a proper name, used the English word Lord with a capital L. And then they got parentheses, or in certain cases, capital G-O-D on parentheses, printed in capitals. Okay, now one thing to remember in the Greek, if you don't know, or if you do know, there is no capital letters in the Greek. Okay, so adding these capitals means absolutely nothing except to make things flow in the way that the English language goes. But putting a capital G on a God, you know, was still a stinking God, you know, whether of metal or stone or whatever it is. And Yahweh says that all the gods are going to perish, and I don't believe that Yahweh is going to commit suicide there. So, anyway, it says the present revision returns to the procedure of the King James Version, which follows the precedent of the ancient Greek and Latin translators and the long-established practice in reading of the Holy Scriptures in the synagogue. While it is almost, if not quite certain, that the name was, and they've got a capital N on the name, so it's talking about the name of our Father, our Creator. It says, while it is almost, if not quite certain, that the name was originally pronounced Yahweh, and it says right there ain't no Yahuwah, Yehovah, God, or anything of that sort. It says Yahweh, because that's our Creator's name. This pronunciation was not indicated when the Masoretes added vowel signs to the consonantal Hebrew text. Okay, so when they added these vowel signs, that's where you come up with all this Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahushawashi, and all these kind of different things in your Jehovah's. It came after they added the vowel signs. It says, to the 4 consonants, YHWH, no VH there. It's YHWH is the way that it's written. and it's always been written, even in the most ancient of the Hebrew languages. It says, to the four consonants YHWH of the name which had come to be regarded as too sacred to be pronounced. See, and that's why those scribes and Pharisees and those even before them stopped calling on the Creator's name. They considered it too sacred to pronounce. Now, this is a tradition of men I just spoke of in the last video, where, the scribes and the Pharisees came to Yahshua saying, why is it your men don't wash their hands before they eat, the traditions of our forefathers and such? Well, the thing is, they also in the same way made it a tradition that our Creator's name was too sacred to pronounce. They were afraid for people because it says, if you take my name in vain, or you bring my name to nothing, I will not, pardon that kind of stuff going on, says Yahweh. Don't use my name in vain. Don't bring my name to nothing by saying it's okay to eat pork or commit adultery or to side with the Sodomites and the Cadamites or the crowd that's running off to evil. Don't side with these. Doing those things, you actually bring a shame to our Father's name. So when you speak against the laws, you're actually taking His name and bringing it to nothing. So the scribes and Pharisees, and those even before them, the lying preachers that thought they knew our Father but had nothing to do with Him. I mean, even Jeremiah, Jeremiah they call him today, but in Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 26 and 27, it shows that our Creator's name, our loving Father Yahweh's name, was forgotten for Baal. B-A-A-L. Now, if you look up in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, you'll see that Baal equals Lord. Baal equals Lord, which means Baal and Lord are the same one, the same way that Satan is Baal and Satan is Lord. You could say Baal equals Lord equals Satan, equals her minions, equals wickedness. You can keep going on with those equal signs, but these wicked men chose where our Father said, if you want salvation, you call upon my name, and I will deliver you. But these people considered that name too sacred to be pronounced. Most likely them brood of vipers that Yahshua pointed out and spoke about, because they're nothing but reptilian little slimy things that think to change our Father's law so that they can eat you. That's all right. It says, to the four consonants YHWH of the name, which had come to be regarded as too sacred to be pronounced, they attached vowel signs indicating that in its place should be read the Hebrew word Adonai, meaning Lord. Now, Adonai is another name also you could look up in the, I believe it's the Two Babylons by Hislop, whatever his name is. But he shows where Tammuz was also known as Adonai or Adonis, and Tammuz was the illegitimate son of Nimrod, who married his own mother, became a mother something or other, and they had this illegitimate child, Tammuz, who's also known as Adonai, and the mark or sign, which is kind of like a signet for Tammuz, because he was really high up there, in the deception. He was a false messiah of those days, and his signet basically, or his sign or his mark, was the crucifix. And that was many years before, Yahshua was born. Okay? And Yahshua was never nailed to a crucifix, as they say. In fact, Yahshua says, that in the same manner that Moshe raised up the pole, in the same manner the Son of Man must be, put to death. So, Moshe had, he put up a pole. It was just a stick, and then Yahweh had him put the serpent on there, so when people looked at it, and they was being bit by these serpents, they'd survive if they looked upon the pole with the snake on it. But that pole without the snake is what Yahshua was supposed to be nailed to, was a pole, not a crucifix. Just trying to get that straight for you. Anyway, it says, they attach vowel signs indicating that in its place should be read the Hebrew word Adonai, meaning Lord, and it's got a capital L there also, or in parentheses, or Elohim, meaning God, on parentheses. The ancient Greek translators substituted the word Kyrios, or parentheses, Lord, on parentheses, for the capital letter name. The Vulgate likewise used the Latin word Dominus. The form Jehovah is of late medieval origin. Of course, the letter J was not even invented until around 300 years ago. Any reputable encyclopedia will show you that. Just go to the letter J, look it up. First thing it's going to tell you is that the letter J was invented in the 16th century, or others will say 16.5 century, others will say the 17th century. So between the 16th and 17th century, all of these encyclopedias agree that that was around the time, around 300 years ago, the letter J was invented. And we're talking a man that was born 2,000 years ago, named Yahshua Messiah. How could a man 2,000 years ago be born with a name that's only 300 years old? Mathematicians can't even figure that out. So anyway, the form of Jehovah is of late medieval origin. It is a combination of the consonants of the divine name. Satan's got a divine name, Yahweh doesn't, neither does Yahshua. Okay, and the vowels attached to it by the Masoretes, but belonging to an entirely different word. Okay? And that's what you need to know. You need to know that even in the Bibles, the older ones, they don't put these in the new ones, though, they don't want you to come to the realization that you've really been lied to, so they stopped doing this around 1960 or so. They stopped informing the people that the true name, Yahweh, YHWH, was the Tetragrammaton, and that it was, every year, the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go into the temple, even in the days of Yahshua, and he would proclaim the name Yahweh, but he'd whisper it when he sprinkled the blood on the ark. Yahweh. So nobody would hear him, for the most part. These priests and Sadducees, they all knew. These things was passed down from high priest to high priest, but it's just something that they kept from the people because they were afraid that they would say, like people do today, God damn it, and they would think, someone said, well, Yahweh damn it, well, you're asking Yahweh to bring a curse, so you're bringing his name to nothing is what they were afraid people were going to do, and by doing so, they cut off salvation to most of the earth. There's not been any salvation even promoted on the earth since, after Yahshua's death, up to the year 325 AD, it's been recorded that at that time was at the last year that there's been any true believer on the face of the entire earth. All of them were killed off, they had the little circuses and the arenas and everything else, burning them in, the emperor's garden and such to light up the night. They burned the bodies of our brothers and sisters, and they thought it was a marvelous thing, but, we're not talking about getting salvation from the Catholics or from any other religion. We're talking about our Heavenly Father, Yahweh, his name's sake. And he gave all things to the Son, now Yahshua Messiah, who came, who laid his own life down and picked it up again for you for your sins. And there's only one name in heaven or on earth, and as you see, up until around 1960, Yahweh's name was known. And hopefully there's going to be a couple pictures we'll attach here of some coins that were minted through the centuries long ago, where they actually have the YHWH right on the coins in ancient Hebrew. It's right there. People knew the name of Yahweh. It's just been recently cut off. But after they cut off salvation in the year 325 AD, when all the believers were done, salvation has not been opened again up until these last generations. So everybody that's got these little books out there, their commentaries and everything, they haven't even a clue of what they were speaking of. where you need to get your information is straight from the mouth of our teacher, Yahshua Messiah. You start calling on Yahweh's name and you know who Yahshua is, or have a vague idea that Yahshua is the guy that's telling you to keep the commandments and the laws just like he did, to walk exactly as he did, and he'll accept you if you don't even touch the unclean thing, as 1 Corinthians will tell you. Please look these things up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I mean, it's your salvation at stake, not mine. I'm quite confident that I'm of the way. I'm doing what I was commanded to do, and I'm not fearful of death. They could chop my head off. I know when Yahshua returns, it'll be just like I woke up, from a night's sleep, whether I was killed 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 3,000, it don't matter. When Yahshua raises these ones up, just like the fella next to him on the stake, that was up there like this, and he's telling the other fella, hey, what are you picking on Yahshua for, man? And he says, hey, what about me, or whatever was said. And Yahshua said, today you'll be in paradise with me. Well, Yahshua didn't go to paradise that day. Says that he went into the bowels of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. He was dead. Well, when this man that was next to him, nailed to the stake next to him, when he's raised up, it's going to be just like that day. Yeah, just like that day. So Yahshua wasn't lying. It's just that, these lying preachers don't understand because they can't put themselves in the time or in the mind frame of the true believers, because these lying preachers never believe. They tell you that the commandments and laws are done away with, tell them they're a liar. If they tell you that the name of our Creator is anything other than Yahweh, tell them they're a liar. Yahshua will back you up. Until we meet again, I hope this hasn't offended too many people, except for you lying preachers, and if it did, get in here, man. Jump on into this book. Prove all things. Prove all things and hold fast that which is righteous. Peace.